Reading is fundamental, but some of the books being read in schools are now being pulled from libraries. Take these books, for instance, Genderqueer and Lawn Boy.
It's not age appropriate. It shouldn't be in the schools, and it shouldn't be accessible to children of any age.
Those books are just some of the many being censored, along with Mouse or Survivor's Tale. Opponents say it contains inappropriate language and images for children. Supporters say it's history.
I want my children to have the best education possible. That doesn't necessarily equate to the most comfortable education possible.
Education through reading, and today through dialogue. Justice for all, book censorship in America starts now. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I'm Tammy Fields. Right now, across the country, parents, activists, school board officials, and lawmakers, they are challenging books at a pace not seen in decades. And among the most questioned, books about race, gender, and sexuality. It is a hot topic right now, and one that we're going to try to shed some light on with today's panel right here. Joining us today is author and activist George Johnson, English teacher Shawanda Morgan, and the Chief Technology and Communications Officer at No Left Turn in Education, Yael Levine Sheldon. Thank you all so much for being here with us. We appreciate your time. So this first question is going to be of Yael. I want to start with you, of No Left Turn in Education. It's just one of many organizations across the country asking for certain books to be removed from schools or at least reviewed. Tell us what you think has sparked this movement.
Well, COVID did. COVID put all of our kids at home in virtual school. I hosted a virtual learning pod in my house for my two sons and their friends. And I've always been an involved mom. I've been, room mom for many years and everything. But we really did not get to see exactly what our children were learning until they were learning at home. So that I would say what sparked the entire movement.
Shawanda, I know you're an educator. You're in the classroom every single day. What's your reaction on this push to have some of these books censored? We're seeing this across the country.
One of the things that I know for sure, not only do I teach English, but I'm also an advocate for understanding and learning history. History has never sided with book bans. It's never seen those kinds of actions in a good light. As a woman, a teacher, a Black woman in America, I have the awesome opportunity to be able to share my experiences with students. And as these events have been unfolding, what they tell me is that my experiences don't matter, that George's experiences don't matter. And so if our experiences are not allowed to be connected to the students and share with them what we've gone through, because many of them have the same lives, experiences, then what they're being told is that unless they fit into a specific category, their experiences won't be talked about in public education.
Yeah,
and that to me is a sad thing.
That is not what No Left Turn in Education is saying. So I don't know about other organizations, but it is not what No Left Turn in Education is saying.
I did not say you. I was just sharing my thoughts about what I'm seeing across the country.
Yeah, I do want you to jump in at this point. Give us an example of a book in particular that your organization has had an issue with, and tell us why.
Sure. Two main books, and there are others that, are the book list that we have on our website is more of a, hey, parents, be aware of what your children have available in the library. Not necessarily remove them, not necessarily, sometimes it's more of like, hey, just know what your kids are reading in the library and you might want to take a look. And if you want to take a look and you want to have the school division review them, that's up to you parents. So the two main books for now, for me personally, I would say is Genderqueer and The Lawn Boy by Jonathan Evison. And the reasons being are that they are filled with inappropriate, sexually explicit materials. In the case of Lawn Boy, it's pedophilic materials. And if they were movies, they would be rated R. and would not be allowed in K through 12 schools.
Okay. Yeah, that's very fair. So let's bring in an author right now to talk more about this and get his take on this. This is George. His book, All Boys Aren't Blue. It is a book that has been selling quite a few copies, but it has been removed, I believe now, from some 19 states, from school libraries. What is your take on all of this, especially for viewers who might say, what is all this hubbub about when it comes particularly to your book? Because I know this is deeply personal for you. Tell us about your book.
Yeah, absolutely. All Boys Aren't Blue is my life story. It's simply my journey as a Black queer person growing up in America from birth until the age of 21. It's a story about the Black family dynamic, though. I had an amazing grandmother who understood and recognized what queerness was. I lived in a Black family that had transgender people, and we never shamed or shunned. We always operated from a space of love first, and we always had a place to call home. It didn't necessarily stop some of the things that I had to navigate in society and some of the hardships I had to go through. But at the end of the day, my story is literally just one about the Black family dynamic and how great Black queer people can become when they have strong Black families who truly support them. I think the biggest misconception about the book is who the book is geared towards. I think it's very dangerous when we just simply say these books are not appropriate for K through 12. Some of these books are not aimed at K through 12. Some of these books are literally aimed at 10 through 12 grade, like my book is. And so the nefarious thing that is being done oftentimes is people will say our kids, knowing that, or our children, knowing that kids and children typically associates with a very much younger age than what the demographic actually is for our books and materials, which are the upper teenage group, which are actually experiencing things like sexual assault, sexual abuse, and certain traumas that they deal with on their own. And these materials ensure that they have the resources to know how to deal with those problems when they present themselves.
I don't have a lot of time right here before we have to take a break, but George, I want to talk more about your book, because your book in particular is a focus of this debate that's going on even right here in our area. In Flagler County alone, there was actually a school board member that filed a complaint with the sheriff's office saying, in fact, that this book needed to be investigated as a crime. Did you ever in your wildest dreams think that by sharing your story, you might be a target?
Yeah, I mean, to be Black and queer and tell your story, I have watched my ancestors' stories going all the way back to Phyllis Wheatley be banned in this country. So I can't have any expectation of being any different. I also knew that once I went on got very vocal about it, that the next step typically when they are criminalizing Black people is to go the police route, because they feel like that's their personal 911, 411 service. So I knew that once we were starting to shift the narrative and people were really actually understanding what our books were, the next route was going to be to try and criminalize us, which they're currently doing across the country with these laws and these bans.
Hold tight. We're going to get to you and hear more of your perspectives here. We're going to pause for just a moment, though, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the group that's really stuck in the middle of all of this debate. We talked a little bit about it here. That's our kids. Justice for All, Book Censorship in America will return after a quick break. Keep it here. Welcome back, everyone, to our latest installment of Justice for All. Today, we are talking about the removal of books from libraries at public schools across our country. I want to direct our focus now to children, to kids. Yael, I know that you are a mother of two. Has there been any books in particular that you have had conversations with your own kids about that they've come across that have really sparked your concerns?
No, nothing personally in my family. We are a very open family. I talk to my kids about just about everything. They're 13 and 15. I will say to George's comment that these books are geared towards high schoolers. That's true. And I personally would be fine with my 15-year-old reading your book, I'm sorry, but not my 13-year-old. And I would say, but that should be up to the parents. So if there was a system of notifications, what book the child is checking out, that would be completely appropriate. But we have to remember that even in high school, most of the students are still minors. Most of them, even most seniors, are not 18 yet. So they're still minors. And we do actually have laws in this country. For example, Section 1466A of Title 18 in the United States Code refers to this kind of content. So while I think it's perfectly fine and I read the book and I think it's a wonderful book, George. So I think it's perfectly fine for an 18-year-old to read it. And personally, for my 15-year-old to read it, because we talk about these matters in my family, that should be up to the parent, and as long as they're minors.
Before I get to George on this, let me ask Shawanda this question as a teacher, because while I understand that Yael, as a parent, she is having this conversation with her child, we know that there are a lot of parents who do not want to have this conversation with their kids, or perhaps they're not being raised by mom or dad, perhaps a grandmother or a guardian or a grandpa. So how do teachers stand as the bridge to make that decision? What is it that you all are having to do in the classroom when you have students that are asking you these questions, or who perhaps want to check out this book or to learn more, or they're curious?
Well, number one, a lot of times students are not going to come into contact with a lot of literature unless it is in school. A lot of times it is the classroom, it is the school library that allows kids to come into contact with better literature that opens up their minds and that teaches them about different time periods, people, experience, and so on. And so as I navigate this field called teaching, and I've always done this, every year I've had a social justice unit that usually starts in January and it ends around April, because I go from Dr. King, the Civil Rights Movement, I move through Black History Month, I move into March, which is Women's History Month, and then we end by talking about the Holocaust. And a lot of times when I'm teaching the Holocaust, I circle all the way back around to the Civil Rights Movement and the things and many of the stories, because they do correlate. And so I will share this with you. I have been teaching. I am a high school teacher now, but I long was an 8th grade teacher. And I have been at the forefront of, sending out what I truly believe are anti-racist and humanitarians into the world after they have been in my classroom. And that to me is the ultimate goal of any teacher, or should be. And so in my classroom, for instance, I've had parents who complain that Miss Bonner is teaching too much about Black people. What does that mean, too much? And so I've had students that have said it, but because they come from homes where the N-word is tossed around like candy, where they are taught that, if it's not white centered, that it's not right. And so, we have to talk about what the audience is. So when people say our children, remember that this educational system didn't always include all of our children. And so who's the audience for those comments? Because when it comes to my kids, I would like for my children to know about all different experiences. So you can't ask for schools to ban books when you are affecting other people's kids. See, but that's where audience comes in. George stated it earlier. You got to understand the audience, right? And so there's a difference between asking the school to keep your kids away, which honestly, you might be cheating your kids out of experiences as well.
Shawanda,
there's a difference in that.
Let me jump in real quick and ask this question of George, because George, I know that you've made this comment that there's a whole generation of young people reading your books, and you've heard from them, and you say this could be transformative. Young people, when it's age appropriate, reading different books and learning about different people. You say what to that?
Yeah, I think it's really important to discuss the term age appropriate. It's funny because people will say like, oh, I don't want my kids to learn or know about, let's say, sexual abuse or sexual trauma. But guess what? Your kid may be dealing with it from the age of 6 on, from the age of 2 on. One of the people who went to a school board meeting to deny my book has been charged with being potentially, allegedly a pedophile. So the people who are on the front lines of the book bans trying to stop us from putting the materials that would teach kids about predators are also the predators. And so that's why it's a very, very interesting line that we're treading when we discuss this. I also find it interesting, especially in America, when we discuss age appropriate, that we'll say, well, my child is too young to read about this particular sexual experience or this particular thing, or about even identity and knowing about pronouns. But we also have laws in many states that allow kids as young as the age of 10 to have hunting rifles, the age of 10 to carry deadly weapons in this country. And on the flip side, these very same parents are saying, but my child is too young to know about experiences of other people, to know about sex, even though they could carry a deadly weapon in this country. So I think under like just more morally, we are kind of bankrupt when we think about what we're actually trying to get across to kids and teens. But what I do know is I have watched teens read my book and name their sexual abusers at school board meetings to say, this is why this book changed my life. I have watched teens have conversations with their parents. I have watched parents take this book out and then learn something about their teens. And so the bigger question isn't, should my teen be reading this book? The bigger question parents should be asking is, if my teen wants to read a queer book, I need to have a conversation with my teen because maybe there's something I'm missing.
We have to take a quick break. More Justice for All after the break. You're on Spectrum News. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. We are about to wrap up our latest Justice for All presentation on book ban efforts across the United States. We have a very passionate group of panelists here talking about this. So I want to make sure that I give everybody an opportunity to talk about solutions. Is there a solution, Yael, to this situation, to this problem?
I think there is, and I think there's a reasonable solution. So I will start by saying a ban is very different than removing content from K through 12 schools that is still available in the county or city library and still available in the bookstores. So if you're just removing from the schools because it's age inappropriate and because it actually violates laws that are in the federal laws, then it's not banning. Banning is what happened to the Dr. Seuss books that were with racial imagery and content. They were actually taken out of circulation and they're not printing any new ones. That is banning, okay? So that's one thing I'd like to clear up. The second thing I'd like to clear up is that, yes, there is a solution. The solution is a notification system for families, legal guardians, parents from the library of what their child checks out. And really, I love the way my family is, and we talk about everything about race, about anti-Semitism, about transgender, about queer, about LGBTQ plus people. We talk about sex openly. But you know what? There are people who are not comfortable with that. And that's not my job to judge them. I may disagree with them, but it's not my job to tell them how to raise their children.
Okay.
So a system of notifications would be the solution.
Got it. So let's talk about notification. Shawanda, we know that many teachers send home all kinds of things with little Johnny in their backpack, and it never makes it to mom and dad, and you never get it back for the entire semester. So is there a way for parents to be notified when their child picks up a book from the library or someone says, this is a great book that I just got done reading? How could that notification system work? And what do you see as a solution?
Well, yes, of course. In the district where I teach, there is a system where the parents can be able to go into the child's library account. And if they want to exclude certain books or titles from being checked out by their kid, they can do that. If they are concerned about, a book, then, if they have legitimate reason, then they can do that. Here's the thing, though. Homophobia, racism and discrimination are not legitimate reasons. So you have to keep that at home and in your house and understand that in the schools, a lot of times we're going to introduce works that are in alignment with our greater society. And with making sure that students understand other people's experiences. Because I have, in the past, I remember having a student who told me that a poem she chose by Langston Hughes, the great writer, Langston Hughes, her white father said, oh no, it's racist, you can't read that. And so I ran into that child a few months ago. I need you to know that she's no longer speaking to her parents. And it wasn't just that issue, but it was a growing issue. So I need you to understand that if you try to keep certain things from your kids and they recognize, that there's hate and there's bigotry and there's, discrimination threaded through all of that, they will see that and they will make decisions. So be careful about waiting until they're 18, because when they're 18, they're going to also make some decisions about whether or not they want to continue relationships with, with people, whether it be parents or other family members who have basically tried to cajole them into being the opposite of people like John Lewis.
Let's pitch this question over to George right now, because I've heard you talk about Generation Z and the fact that this generation is a little different from past generations. So let's talk a little bit about that when we start talking about possible solutions.
Yeah, we got to be very clear. Generation Z is the first generation, the closest generation where more than 50% of the kids will be non-white. That is what is at the crux of this whole book banning. And we just need to call a spade a spade. This is the first time that a generation will not look as the past generations have looked. Generation Z also has, as of right now, it's a growing number, but at a minimum, 15% of Generation Z is already identifying as LGBTQ. And so when we think about that, that means that the titles in these school systems need to start matching what the actual school systems look like.
As a teacher, is this a newfound experience for you that in the classroom you feel like you're under the spotlight for anything that you might teach or share with students?
As far as in the classroom, no, this is not something, as far as, being in the classroom and being under the microscope, that has been a teacher's life for, last couple of generations. And so for a lot of teachers, being under the microscope, having bills that come down that mandate different things that are not funded or don't make sense, that's nothing new. It's something that we definitely have to deal with. And I'll say this, when George was talking about, certain things being white centered, I remember being in the 11th grade in 1993 when Schindler's List came out in the movies, and they gave us tickets. There were organizers from the Jewish Memorial, the Holocaust Memorial, that paired up with our school board, sent juniors and seniors to the theater. And I remember there were scenes in that movie where there were naked people, there were women, there were men, there were children, but nobody was hollering that we were being, put, or that, pornography was being put in front of us, or that we were being subjected to pornographic or sexually explicit material, because we understood that in the bigger picture, this was history and it was part of the context. And so we could put that in front of children, and we were 16, 17, some 18, some of the kids might have been 15 years old. And so you have to have those conversations and teach things in the context. And so what if, I now decided that, Schindler's List is full of pornography and it's not right.
Shawanda?
And we shouldn't teach it. Yes.
Good point, but we're going to have to leave it right there. I know that all of you wanted to make sure that you got your points across, but we only have a certain amount of time. So I thank you all for being passionate about your feeling and having this opportunity to have this conversation. So we thank you all. Shawanda, Yael, George, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
We appreciate
Thank you.
Well, we want to thank you at home for watching, everyone. This episode of Justice for All. Stay informed.